I want to start off by telling you a story. There's a great book that Ravi Zacharias. Now, Ravi Zacharias is one of my favorite authors. I know that he had some issues at the end of his life that kind of put him in bad graces with a lot of folks, but his books are still wonderful to read. And but one of the books is called Jesus Talks with Buddha, The Lotus and the Cross. And it's an imaginary conversation between Jesus and Buddha in regards of how they would approach a young girl. Okay, I'm going to give you the story of a young girl. Her name is Priya. She has left home at the age of 17 to move to the city at the encouragement of her parents to earn a living, but within hours, the friend who she came with, who is a guide in the town, rapes her. He then later helps her find employment as a seamstress, which turns out to be a ruse because it's really a prostitute group, and he's a pimp. So by the age of 23, she is a full-time prostitute managed by a handful of thugs who share her spoils. Priya, whose name means sweetheart, finds out that she is HIV positive. But yet she can't stop what she is doing because it's the only line of work she knows and there is no escape. Her disease disfigures her, and when she can no longer hide it or cure it, she finally succeeds in one of her several suicide attempts. And so the question that comes is, the book goes on and says, if Buddha and Jesus were to talk to this girl, what would they have to offer her? What hope? What salvation? What freedom would they have? Okay? And so I want you all to keep that in mind as we go talking about the beliefs that Buddha offers. Okay? So let's go back and review some things. So remember we started off and said that, there's basic ways that we can classify religions. Simply, monotheism means that there is one God. Polytheism means that there are many gods. Pantheism, which we looked at not last week because we weren't here, but the week prior, is kind of a view of polytheism, but it means that everything is God, and God is in everything. So Hinduism believes in pantheism, but they include polytheism within that pantheism. So everything is God, but how do you know that everything is God? Through the multiple gods that you get to see and worship. Then, of course, atheism, there is no God, okay? And then agnostic, that says you don't know there is a God, okay? We kind of know those things. I gotta say this, I know y'all forgive me, but did you hear about the dyslexic who was an atheist? He said there was no such thing as a dog. I'm sorry. But one of the things we talked about is how do you classify what a religion is? Remember in the first lesson we did that. And one of the things we said is, well, you have to have a belief in God. Well, in Buddhism, they're not necessarily atheist, but they're non-theist. Meaning they say that it doesn't matter whether you believe in God or not. And most Buddhists do not believe in God. They do not believe in a higher power. And so that's one of the things we're going to look at. Another thing we looked at, the four major questions that every religion and every worldview must address. And that is origin. How did I come into being? Where do we get here? Every belief system has a creation story, a creation myth that we must look at. Second of all, meaning. Why am I here? Okay, what's my purpose in life? If there is no purpose in life, what's the purpose of it? Okay. Third, morality. How do I know right from wrong? Where do we get our ethics? Where do we get our beliefs? Okay. So when I tell you, hey, you can't do that, why can't I do it? Or someone says, hey, that's wrong. On what basis do we say that is wrong? Why? What authority do we have to say that? And then finally, destiny. Where am I headed after I die? Okay? So every belief system you have has to address these four major issues. Now there's lots of others that come with that, but these are the questions that every worldview has to address. And so every religion we've looked at is different. They may be very similar, but they each have their own exclusive claims about how we got here, how we know that what is right and wrong, how we can be saved. That's another thing we'll talk about. But also where we go after we die. So we're going to look at how we address this through the lens of Buddha. Okay? So Buddhism is a very simple concept. Okay? Buddhism is not a special theology about this is who God is. Even though a lot of us think of Buddha as a god, Buddha is not considered to be a god. Though I love the t-shirt that once had a picture of the very fat Buddha on it, and it said, I have the body of a god. But here is Buddhism, and we're going to look at this more in detail, in a nutshell. Life stinks. The reason life stinks is because you don't want it to stink. The way you get life to not stink is stop wanting it not to stink. And when you get it to stop stinking, it will no longer stink. Okay? That's an easy way of saying it. Life is full of suffering. The way that you get over suffering, or the reason why you have suffering, is because you desire things in life. And the way to get rid of suffering is to get rid of your desire. And once you get rid of your desire, that is when you reach enlightenment. Okay? Now, Hinduism started as a break-off of Hinduism. So we're going to look at how the connections come. And when you say, what do Buddhists believe, it's going to be very hard to pin down. Because so much of the Buddhist faith is composed of other aspects of faith. And so there is no one set standard of this is what all Buddhists believe. There's general guidelines, but it's not like Christianity where you have, this is our theology. It's not like Islam where you say, we have a Quran. Buddhists, they have the teachings of Buddha, but people say, well, Buddha's really irrelevant to what we believe. And so it all comes down to the individual. But let's talk about how he got to where he was, okay? So, the story goes, well, let me first of all say that Buddhism is now the 4th largest religion in the world, okay? 4th largest, right behind Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism. Okay, remember, when you talk about the Jewish faith, that's at the bottom. Okay, that's a very small minority within the world, okay? So, I'm going to try to do the best with this. Y'all, I talk with my hands, and so I'll be going all over the place. But the story is told of a young man by the name of Siddhartha Gautama. I think it's how you say his name. Okay. Okay. In a small town in Nepal, he belonged to a warrior class in the caste system, and his mom and dad brought him into the world. But it was such a blessed thing that there's many legends about it. And I just want to say that many of the legends around the birth of Buddha came along when Christianity started to move into Asia. And so many of these legends came up as a way to counterbalance the miraculous stories of Jesus' birth. And so one of the things that it said, when mom was pregnant, that a giant elephant came to her and blessed her with his trunk. And then as she was giving birth, a tree lowered its branch and helped deliver the baby. Okay? And so people said, this is a sign. This child is gifted. This child is destined for greatness. And so the father said, why is this? And so he went to a soothsayer. And the soothsayer said, this means the child is either destined to 2 great things. Either he is going to be a great leader, a warrior, and a king, or he's going to be a sage, and he's going to tell people and lead them towards enlightenment. Well, the dad was a warrior. He didn't want anything to do with religion, and so he said, I got to get this kid to avoid everything. Now, 7 days after his birth, his mother died. And so, for the next 29 years, the father did everything in his power to have him avoid anything that would deal with suffering. He made sure that Nothing happened bad, that he never witnessed anything bad. All the harsh realities of life would never come to him. All he ever knew was pleasure. At the age of 16, he got married, had a son, but he was never allowed to leave the palace. Okay? Now, y'all just think about this. What happens when you shelter people from the realities of the world? It's not good. No, right? Bad things happen, they ask questions, and then they wonder what is really going on out there. Okay? And so at the age of 29, he said, Dad, I gotta get out of this palace. I gotta get out and see the world. And so his dad said, okay, you can go out, but he wanted to make sure everything was clear. So he didn't come in contact with any bad people. But he couldn't control everything. And so what happened is that this man came in contact with what became known as the four sights. And that four sights is two old men, a very ill person, and a funeral. And so as he went around for the first time, he saw an old man. And he looked and said, why is that man so old and wrinkly? Why is his hair gone? And then he saw another man and said, that man's sick. He had never seen anybody sick before. He was dying. And then he saw a funeral. And no one had ever told him about death. And so he had questions. And this is what he said afterwards. And this is a modern translation of the words. He says, when ignorant people see someone who is old, they are disgusted and horrified, even though they too will be old someday. I thought to myself, I don't want to be like the ignorant people. After that, I could no longer feel the intoxication with youth anymore. Okay? So in other words, we're all going to get old. And since I know I'm going to get old, I can't enjoy being young anymore because I know that I'm going to get old. Okay? He said, when ignorant people see someone who is sick, they are disgusted and horrified, even though they too will be sick someday. I thought to myself, I don't want to be like the ignorant people. After that, I could not feel the usual intoxication with health anymore. When ignorant people see someone who is dead, they are disgusted and horrified, even though they too will be dead someday. I thought to myself, I don't want to be like the ignorant people. After that, I could not feel the usual intoxication with life anymore. Okay? So basically what he came to the conclusion was something that we have heard in Scripture. Meaningless. Meaningless. All of life is meaningless. Okay? And so he found that he could not be happy. And so he tried to find ways. So, tell him this sounds familiar if you read the book of Ecclesiastes. He tried to pleasure himself. Did not deny his body any type of pleasure whatsoever, any type of vice that would bring any type of what people would say, this would make you feel good. He did not reject anything, but after a while, it just emptied himself. And he too said, this is meaningless. And so, when that didn't work, he kissed his wife and his son goodbye and said, I'm out of here, I gotta go find the truth. And so he went and he poured himself into religion, Hindu religion. But he's looked at all the gods and all the things, he said, this is all worthless, this means nothing. Because he didn't believe in God. And so then he said, but maybe my body is the issue. So if I can just beat my body into submission, then maybe I would find meaning. And so that's where he went down his path of asceticism, basically torturing himself. But even after flaging and doing all that stuff, he still never found purpose, never found meaning. And then he tried, maybe if I do the middle ground, a little bit of pleasure, a little bit of want. You know, just go a little back and forth. Get the good thing, beat myself up over it. Get the good thing, beat myself up over it. But again, he felt empty. And so finally, at the age of 35, he sat under a tree and began to meditate. And he fell into a deep trance, the way the story goes. And he saw the world as he had never saw it before. And as he saw the world in this way, he said, I understand that the world is full of suffering. And the reason we suffer is because we don't want to suffer. And if we could just get rid of desire, we would become one with the universe. And then he became what we call enlightened. And the word Buddha, Bud means enlightenment. And so Buddha means the enlightened one. Okay? So the name Buddha, it's not an actual name, it's a title. And so most Buddhists will say that there is actually been many Buddhas. In fact, a lot of Buddhists will say that Jesus himself was a Buddha. Okay? And so they say that he reached that enlightenment. And so he spent the next 45 years teaching others this type of way. And he said that the goal was for you to reach this type of enlightenment, and that would end the cycle of reincarnation. And so you would become one with the universe. But unlike with Hinduism, remember, where yourself, your personality, and all that gets reincarnated, Buddha believed that your body was just a composition of different aspects of existence. And so when you are reincarnated, your essence just splits up. And you become all mixed in with it again. And then you're brought back together as something completely different. You're not the same person. And so he said that you had to face this enlightenment, and then you finally escape that, and that would be called I'm going to mess this up, parinibbana, which means final release. Okay? But the thing is, all this comes back down to that age-old question. Why do good people experience bad things? How do we answer the question of suffering? I can tell you as a pastor, the one question I get asked all the time, and it's asked in different ways. Why is this happening? Why did God let this happen to me? Couldn't God do something about this? Why? And so your heart goes out to this man because he had been sheltered his whole life, and he sees the suffering, and then for the first time he realized, you mean I want to get old too? Do y'all remember the first time that you realized you're getting old? That's dumb. Some of y'all haven't happened yet. Yeah. And it's sad when you first realize what death was and how you deal with that death. When you deal with this question of suffering. And there's lots of different ways to try to explain suffering. We could say it's evil beings in the world, so it's Satan. It could be like the multi-gods of Hinduism. And there's lots of things like that, it's true. Or it could be sinful people living in a sinful world. We live in a fallen world. Bad people do bad things, we feel the effects of that. Sometimes poor choices. But other times, Buddha got a little bit of the truth contained with what he said. I want to read to you 1 John chapter 2, verse 16. For everything in the world, the cravings of sinful man, the lust of his eyes, and the boasting of what he has and does, comes not from the Father, but from the world. Those desires. Think about it. How many times have we gotten in trouble for greed, for lust, for pride? All those desires. Another verse we looked at not too long ago, with James 4:1. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? So there is this sense of desire. So, if that's how you see that, imagine, how do you explain to someone who's been sheltered their whole life that the reason why that you are experiencing this fear of growing old is because you don't want to be old. And so the only way to escape that would be, I no longer want to be old. I no longer want to be young. I no longer care. Okay? So a way that would explain to me is that if you receive, for example, I have this cup of coffee. Okay? One of the things that would break my heart more than anything else is if I spilled this cup of coffee. Okay? The way I can overcome that is if I imagine the coffee has already been spilled. And if I know it's already spilled, then I look at it now and say, it'll be gone one day. I'll just enjoy it right now. Okay? That's Buddhism in essence of what it is. And I will not spill the coffee. So, all right, so before we go any further, any questions? Crazy.
Barry,
Yes.
I guess I was having a hard time finding. Was this Gautama guy? Is that a true story or is that just?
That is a story that the Buddhists tell.
Oh,
You know, it's one of those things that we can neither confirm it nor deny it. It's just that that was what was passed down.
Okay.
So it's those things. And so, I was sad, now we do know from history that a lot of the legends around his birth came along the time when Christianity started making inroads in Asia. And so it was a way to battle those stories of Christ. And so it's kind of mimic that. But, and y'all, there's so many more stories that goes with that. There's stories of Buddha doing healings, of Buddha doing special things, and just, there's lots of stories. But what most Buddhists will say is, who cares? Because Buddha is not essential necessarily to Buddhism. Yeah. It's a very self-religion. It's geared towards you finding enlightenment within yourself. So you don't really need anybody else. You don't need God. You just need to find the truth and accept the truth. And when you do that, that's when you find the release. Okay? So here are the 4 noble truths of Buddhism. Okay? The first is this, what we call the noble truth of dukkha. Okay? And now, you know, y'all know my childish humor. I look at that and I just start laughing. But dukkha means suffering. Okay? That is just that life, you go ahead and admit it. Life is suffering. Life is going to stink. So, it's kind of like what Job said. Man is born as sure to, as sure as the flames go up, man is born to suffering, to death. That basically, you are going to experience pain. As Christ said, in this world you will have trouble. Okay? Life is going to be hard. You're going to experience all kinds of bad things. Life is temporary. Life is full of disappointment. Life is suffering. Life is pain. And so, when you accept that, you understand that's just the way things are. Okay? My youngest daughter, Savannah, she has a saying. She says all the time. She says, it is what it is. Okay? So we're like, man. For example, whenever Kentucky loses, it is what it is. And my thing is, it should not be what it is. She says, but it is what it is. Okay, so the first noble truth is you have to accept life is suffering. Okay? Second noble truth, the noble cause of dukkha, and that is what they call tanha, which is desire and cravings. You are always craving something outside yourself to make yourself end your suffering. So think about how this would be true for us. How many times if we're feeling down, we want to go do something, right? Okay, now y'all, I want to be honest. How many, if you're having a bad day, you say, I'm going to go shopping? Yeah, you used to ran out of money. But you know, you say, okay, if I can just buy this, that's going to fix me. Or if I can just find that right relationship, that will make me happy. If I can just have that child, that'll fix all my issues. If I can just feel better, I would be no longer suffering. And so the second noble truth is to understand that you want these things. And it's because you want these things that you are feeling these things. If you just did not want to feel better, you'd no longer be upset about not feeling bad. About feeling bad. Okay? So that is where we start with this. So it's not just physical things, but this also ties to like emotions and everything else. Okay? So when we want things and we desire things and we can't have things, we get frustrated. We get angry, we get mad, and we fight each other. We go after each other. So if we can just end that, we all have peace. Okay? So the noble truth, the third one, is the cessation of dukkha, which means I need to detach myself from all desire. Okay? In other words, I no longer want for anything. I no longer want to be happy. I no longer want to be rich. I no longer want that pickup truck without the rusted bumper. I no longer want this. And when you do that, you no longer feel that way. And so you no longer suffer. Now you may still experience suffering in the world, but you don't care if you suffer or not. Because it's all an illusion. Once you get rid of your dukkha, then all of a sudden everything starts to make sense. And this is how you reach nirvana, is when you let go of all desires. And so you gotta find that escape. And so the way that you find that, the way you get there, is what we call the Eightfold Path. So you go from 4 noble truths to the 8 noble path, the Eightfold Path, okay? And what you see here is, you basically have 3 categories, and these are not necessarily in order. So these just go around. So you may have one and try to find another one, but this should be the way that you go for, and this is how you get rid of karma, or release karma, or get good karma your way, okay? So you have to have the right view, okay? Right view on suffering, right view on the different issues, right understanding, the right intention. Why do you not want to suffer? Well, because your desires are gone, and so it all comes together. Right speech, how you talk to people, okay? Right actions, right livelihood, right attention, right meditation, right concentration, okay? So once you do all these things and go through them over and over and over again, that is where you will start to experience these things. And so, one of the things that Buddhists will tend to do is they will practice meditation. And they will calm themselves. And so that's why they will isolate themselves and just focus inward and release all negative energy, all bad feelings, all bad mojo, or whatever you want to call it. And so there's anger, they just let it go, okay? And they just release. And so, by doing these over and over and over again, that is how you reach enlightenment. And so when you reach enlightenment, guess who you get to become? Buddha. Okay? So, all right, any questions so far about this?
The right intention's up there twice.
What it is? Oh.
Must be really important.
All right, yeah, you got double right intentions. All right, here, let me go back to my notes. I'm sorry, I made the graph wrong. So, here, I'm going to give you this Eightfold Path. Right understanding, right motivation, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. So we put it said right intention, that intention to be effort. So in other words, you're actually doing what you're supposed to be doing. Okay? You don't want to be a lazy Buddha. But you say that's that Buddha got so fat. All right. Any questions about that? Okay.
No wonder they're unhappy. You can't do all this. It's impossible.
Well, yeah, and that's one thing we're to think about. It's kind of like we're saying, no, I don't want a cup of coffee. I don't want a cup of coffee. I don't want a cup of coffee. Guess what I'm thinking about? A cup of coffee, right? And so that is where this idea of being able to escape desire by not wanting desire, you can't do. Okay? And so that's where we'll see this is and we'll talk at the end of this, is that it actually goes back to the law of non-contradiction. Because the desire to not desire is a desire itself. And so, how do you experience that? And so there's hardness to this, but a lot of times you will find a lot of Buddhists who do experience peace. There's a calmness in their pain because they lose a lot of selfishness. And think about it, a lot of the issues we have deal with, I want what I want and you want what you want, and we're going to fight until one of us gets our way. Well, if you don't care what you want, and I don't care what I want, and we just want what is best, you're able to find peace. Okay? And there's actual scripture verses that go with this, okay? Now, the three gems of the Buddhist faith, and these are not necessarily that you have to agree with these, but you have to kind of say that this is the basic truths. And that is the Buddha, that not only the historical Buddha, but that you can become the Buddha. In other words, you can reach enlightenment. Okay, that you can get there. Okay. Second is what we call the Dhamma, and that is the teachings of Buddha and the ultimate truth they guide to. And then they want you to be part of what they call the Sangha. Okay, and you don't have to do this in order to reach enlightenment, but it's good to be with like-minded people. And so Sangha would be kind of what we would call the church. Okay? They all come together. Okay? So let's go back to some more of these beliefs. Okay? Suffering, we said suffering is a state of mind, and so you achieve a balanced, peaceful, detached state of mind, the suffering can be extinguished. And I don't know what went out. Okay? But basically what Buddhists will say is that suffering is an illusion. Okay? If you can just get rid of desire, you end your suffering. So, if you go back to that story of that young girl who was raped, who had HIV, and became a prostitute, what Buddha would say to her is, just don't feel that way. Just think of what happened to you as not being that bad. That it's just, it is what it is. And accept it. That would be hard, wouldn't it? So, like, if your child dies, it is what it is. You got cancer, it is what it is. You're hungry, it is what it is. You just have to accept it. Okay? Another thing is that there's the understanding of non-permanence. Basically that everything is going to end. Okay? So you're happy now? You won't be tomorrow. I had our last church I was at, bless her heart, she was so used to everything being bad for her life. One day she got a check in the mail from her insurance saying that she had overpaid her insurance. And so she got a check for like $1,300. And then she got something else happen, but she was just so miserable. And was like, Lindy, why are you so sad? This is good, you just got $1,000. She said, because nothing lasts. I mean, something bad's about to happen. So, things don't stay good all along. And so that's where, they would say, if you're happy today, don't worry about staying happy because it's not going to stay happy for a while. So everything is left in this kind of, okay? Which, we laugh and say, man, that'd be an awful way to live. It is, but how many of us go from high to high? Think of that, where we're always trying to experience, I was so happy last week, I'm miserable today, what can I do to get happy again? And we go chasing that. Okay? Another thing is the non-soulishness. Okay, that's a word I made up. Okay. But what Buddhists believe is that you, as a soul, do not exist. So you are just, like we said, composed of different parts of your personality, your intellect, your physical body, your not your soul, but just different aspects of different things that make up who you are. But when you die, all of those, okay? And then somewhere along the line, they'll get put back together again and then form someone else. Okay? It's kind of like, think about this, that the car as you drive is just a bunch of parts, okay? All those parts don't really exist, but when the car doesn't really exist, but when the car stops working, it gets pulled apart, and then the axle goes somewhere else, the wheel goes somewhere else, the steering wheel goes somewhere else. It all becomes something new. And your goal is to eventually have all those parts just no longer exist. They just disappear, okay? And so, Buddha does not believe in the identity of the soul. Reincarnation is not the transmigration of the soul, but rather the reassembling of the elements, okay? So, unlike in Hinduism, you don't get reincarnated time and time again as you. You just get put back in the soup. Put it that way. Okay. Okay. Any questions so far? Okay. So now, morals. Okay, we never said origin, and I'll say that the Buddhist faith doesn't really have an origin story. Okay. There's not a whole lot because they say it doesn't matter. That hey, we all don't really exist, so it doesn't matter. Nothing really is real anyway. But morality. How do we understand morality? So here are the 5 things that Buddhists are saying they must refrain from. 1, harming living things. Okay? So they're very non-violent. Okay? Which is kind of ironic because when you think of Buddhists, what do you think of? Martial arts. Okay? But it's all defensive. It's never offensive. Okay? Then, 2, taking what is not given. Okay? So no stealing. Okay? 3, sexual misconduct. Okay? And then lying or gossiping. And then taking intoxicating substances. Okay? Okay? Sounds like Baptist, right? No. Baptistry. No, but these are the things that they say. Now, again, they really don't have any concept of sin. Okay? So you just need to just try to do better. Okay? Try to find enlightenment. Keep going forward. Okay? And so, let me skip over a few things because we want to miss these. So, let's go over the different forms of Buddhism. Okay? So, in Christianity, you basically have 3 forms of Christianity. You have Catholic Church, you have the Eastern Orthodox Church, and you have the Protestant Church. Now, within the Protestant Church, you got all different types of Baptists, Methodists, Presbyterians, and all that. But if you go and say, let's look at the Baptist Church and the Methodist Church, what do they believe? Pretty much the same. Jesus at the center. Throw in the Catholics. Lots of disagreements about different things, but it's still about Jesus, right? There's still certain things. In the Buddhist faith, there are different types of Buddhists that are completely different, okay? And so, this is what we're going to look at, okay? So the first one is this, the Theravada Buddhism, okay? The way of the elders. This is the most oldest school of the Buddhist faith. And so when you go to Thailand and go to all these other places, this is the type of Buddhism that is there, okay? And their focus, their main focus is compassion. So this is the nice Buddhist, okay? And so, but their whole thing is to assist others in getting enlightenment, okay? Now there's a term there that I did not put up there, but, okay, now I'm going to say this, and y'all might have it spelled for y'all, but it's called a Bodhisattva, okay? Bodhisattva. And what that is someone who has reached enlightenment, but instead of going on to nirvana, they would stick around to show you the path. And so this would be like the monks. So they've reached enlightenment, but they don't want to just go. They're going to stay here and say, let me show you the way. Okay? And so this is why monks and all them are highly respected. Certain monks, you got to work your way up. Okay? And so that's why, but they believe it's their job to help others reach enlightenment. Okay? The next one is what we call the Mahayana. Okay. Actually, I'm sorry, y'all. I got that wrong. This one, they're focused on wisdom and meditation. This is the one where they do it themselves. I have my notes backwards. but the one we talk about right now, when Thailand, that's the one where they said, okay, everybody go to your home, meditate, focus, okay? Do that. The next one is the Mahayana, okay? And this is the one where we find in China and Japan, and this is where it's for everybody. And so the differences here is that one said that the first one is that this enlightenment is kind of geared towards only special people. Only the very gifted will reach this enlightenment. Here they say everybody can reach this. Okay? It's kind of like the difference between saying who is deemed to be clergy? Only those who are up here. But Protestants say everybody is ministers. Everybody gets to do this. Okay? They're focused on compassion, helping everybody else reach this. Okay? The third one is one we know most often. Tibet. Okay? The Tibetan Buddhism. Okay? And this kind of brings both together. But one of the things that they are known for is their worship. Okay? They love to come together in communities, and they will do the Buddhist chants. Have y'all heard those? The you know, but it's about finding that oneness, finding that connection, finding that peace. Okay? And so they will use different ways to accomplish this. And they have those bodhisattvas all throughout. And then they have ones who are included called the lamas, okay? And the lamas are believed to be the living embodiment of Buddhists, okay? So, one you'll see here is known as the Dalai Lama, okay? How many of y'all heard of the Dalai Lama?
No.
Okay? So Dalai Lama is believed to be the living incarnation of Buddha, okay? So pieces put back together, Buddha, okay? And so this would be like if Christianity would say, we believe that Jesus Christ has come back and he now lives in Arkansas. And so we all go to Arkansas and make him the king of everything. And then 20 years from now we say, no, he now lives in Japan. We go find him, okay? But so when his soul dies, he's thought to enter the body of a newborn boy, and afterwards, be identified by traditional tests, becomes the new Dalai Lama. And so this guy has so much authority in the Tibetan Buddhists. Now, other Buddhists could care less. They don't agree with that. Okay? It's kind of like, and I don't want to offend anybody when I say this, but like when a pope makes a statement that says you have to do this, Catholics have to do it. Protestants are like, well, yeah, or you tell me. Yeah. So that's kind of how this is. Now, if we had more time, I would go over this. One of the things about the Tibetan Buddhists is they have something that fascinates everybody, and that is the Tibetan Book of the Dead. Have y'all ever heard of that? Y'all don't watch enough horror films. But it's a bunch of rituals and things about how to escape this life and how to go through death. And so it just kind of gives little patterns for things, and people love to talk about it, but it really has nothing to do. The final one is one that the West knows primarily, and that is Zen Buddhism, okay? And so this is focused on meditation. This is big in Japan. And so this is where you are going to meditate to find that peace, to find that calmness, and so you reach enlightenment by finding just the and so you have to meditate. So this is where they have rock gardens, prayer gardens. They have this peaceful existence. And so they will try to go through this. One of the things I like about this is that use of koans, paradoxical riddles to confound reason. All right, you're thinking too much about stuff. Things make too much sense. Let me give you a riddle to help you show that nothing makes sense. And then you go meditate. Okay. One of the things with this is that they believe in beauty. And so part that goes with this, and y'all, I know this is a big thing now. How many of y'all know that, I forgot the exact name of it, to where you go and you hold on to something, and if it brings you joy, you keep it.
Maria Kondo.
What's it called?
Maria Kondo.
Maria Kondo, yeah. If it doesn't bring you joy, release it. Okay? And that's how life should be. Don't hold on to anything. If it brings you joy now, keep it. But if it no longer brings you joy, release. Okay? And that has a way that people are now doing cleanups. Okay? You're going to have a garage sale? And then your wife comes behind you and says, no way, we're keeping it. All right. Okay, and so let me just go through some of these things. Some of the proverbs of Buddha, because Buddha had a lot of wise sayings. He says, to stop suffering, you stop greediness, for greediness is a source of suffering. He says, you overcome anger by love, ill will by goodwill. Overcome the greedy with liberality, the liar with truth. Okay? He says, it is better to conquer yourself than to win 1,000 battles. Okay? Silence is an empty space. Space is the home of the awakened mind. Empty your mind. To me, that's a dangerous thing. I've never liked that, you know. I like this. He says, what's done to the children is done to society. That's true. And also, thoughtfulness is the way of deathlessness. Thoughtlessness is the way of death. The thoughtful do not die. The thoughtless are as if dead already. Okay. So one of the things that I hope that we see here is that there's a lot of things that you say, wow, I like that. I like that. In fact, let's go through here some positive aspects of Buddhism. One, the recognition of suffering in the world. To me, that's good. I like when people face reality and say, hey, life can't stink. One of my biggest peeves about the modern day Christian church is the idea that everything is great. That, you know, you believe in God, life's going to be healthy, wealthy, and wise. That nothing's going to go wrong if you just give enough money, right? But life is full of suffering. And to me, that is a reality we have to experience. I mean, it's something, part of life. The recognition of the evil that desire and cravings can bring, as we said in James, that, you know, when I get selfish, when I want what I want, that causes problems. Okay? Third, the need for discipline and living a holy lifestyle. That whole path of right thinking, right, you know, we would call that disciplines. So for us Christians, read your scripture, pray, okay? Go to church, do these things. The need for wisdom, the need for meditation, and then the recognition of not being attached to things of this world, okay? Now, I think as Christians, we redefine these things, okay? It's like the recognition of not being attached to things of this world. You know, we are told not to crave the things of the world, but yet things of the world, they're a gift from God. We're meant to enjoy. Okay, God wants us to enjoy these things. He wants us to enjoy these relationships. I told you a story in the past. It came, James Dobson did a Thanksgiving special one time on the radio. And he had people who were grateful for things in their life. And one of the ladies who came on was her 4-year-old daughter had died. And you think, man, what a crazy thing to be thankful for. But she didn't say she was thankful that her daughter died. She said, I was grateful I had 4 years to be with her. And that way of looking at things, and you'll hear this again when we get closer to Thanksgiving, when you see everything as a gift from God. That changes. You don't hold it tightly, you hold it with open hand. The Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Okay? So these are things. Negative aspects. Recognize suffering but offers no real solution to the problem. Okay? You know, if I go to the doctor and the doctor says, yeah, you're a mess. I know, that's why I'm here. Tell me how to fix it. Give me an answer, give me a solution. Okay? If all of life is suffering, how do we know what is not suffering? Okay? Good question. Life is a blend of pleasure and suffering. It's kind of what, you know, and y'all please, I hope that y'all recognize this. You take the good, you take the bad, you take it all, and there you have the facts of life. Okay, do y'all know that? Thank you. I did it in our staff meeting the other day, and they all looked at me like, what are you talking about? And I said, it's from a show. And they said, Pollyanna goes, I was raised in Brazil and Portugal, so I don't know your American shows. And then Noah and Izzy, I almost fired them. They said, what year did the show come out? I told the year, and they said, Pastor, we weren't born yet. And I said, I dislike you. But the idea that life is, there's good times and bad times. You know, accept the mountaintops, but understand there will be valleys. But God is the God of the mountaintop, and God is the God of the valley. Okay? Desire is a source of all suffering. We're going to talk about that. God made us to desire. You know, as the deer panteth for the water, so my soul panteth after you. We desire God. And then God gives desires of our heart in this world. Okay? And human beings are relational. So we are meant to have this. We are meant to experience these relationships. I don't want my wife to look at me and say, doesn't matter. You live, die. You're here, doesn't matter. You're gone, doesn't matter.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Holy Mary. But when you love someone, you desire that person. And so you can't have love without desire. Okay? God desires us. We desire God. Okay, so it's things. The right is suffering, but offers no real solution to the problem. This is one of the things I love about Christianity. If y'all get a chance, there's a great book by Lee Strobel called The Case for Faith. And he has a chapter in there about suffering. One of the best books I've ever read. It deals with so many great questions. But in there, the man who is talking says that he went to a temple in Asia. And there he stood before the statue of a laughing Buddha. And he talked about all the pain and suffering he was going through. And he thought, my goodness, how dare you laugh? This being, this Buddha, is so ignorant of what I'm going through. He wants me to be happy in all this. And that image of a laughing Buddha just made him mad. He said, my suffering is real. But then he thought of what a different image we have. We go before a crucified Savior, a man of sorrows, a man who bore the sins of this world, a man who knows what it's like to hurt, a man who says, let me take your pain. Let me have that sorrow. Let me take it into myself. And then you can come and find your peace, not in ignoring these things, but find your peace in me. And I will give you rest in me. I will give you salvation. I will give you hope. And that is another way of seeing suffering and finding true healing, not through ignoring your pain, but by giving it to Jesus Christ. And saying, Jesus, here it is. And he will love you, he will care for you, and he will walk with you through it all. Until the day when suffering is no more. That's the hope we have. Okay? Do y'all have any questions about Buddhism?
Why do they always rub the Buddha's belly for good luck?
Okay. He says, one of the things we didn't get into is that, remember, we talked about how oftentimes in all these religions, there is aspects of religion that adapts to the cultures that they are around, okay? So remember we talked in the very first lesson, there's a lot of what we call animism, and that deals with magi, which is how we say is magic, but it's superstitions. And so a lot of them will take these ancestral worship, combine it with Buddhist theology or of ideas to make their own form of Buddhism. And so there's a lot of them who will take superstitions and attach it to the Buddhist faith. So if you want good luck, what do you have to do?
Rub his belly.
Rub his belly. Okay? And so that comes back. And so that's why oftentimes if you go to like, when I lived in Japan, one of the things that was big is the Buddhist faith was really big, but ancestral worship is very big. And so they would have it where you would have a shrine with Buddha in the middle, and then pictures of great-grandpa and grandpa, and then you would offer fruit to them. And so it's just they take different aspects of their previous beliefs and add it to the Buddhist faith. So not all Buddhists rub Buddha's belly. Okay? Yeah. And I've learned it's very offensive. You walk up to a fat man and rub his belly. And so you want good luck. They don't like that. Any other questions? Yeah.
What was the book that you said right at first?
Oh, that is Ravi Zacharias. Jesus and, hold on, I get the name of it, that exact thing. Jesus Talks with Buddha.
Jesus Talk.
Yeah. I may have it in my office still. I'll look for it, because there's a whole series that he did. He did Jesus Talks with Buddha, Jesus Talks with Muhammad, Jesus Talks with Hitler. That was another thing he did. And so it's a series, they're kind of thin books. So, okay. Anybody else? All right, now, I want to tell you that we got the world religions phase out. Now comes the cults. Okay? And so we're going to start with the new American religious groups. And so here's what your homework is. One of the ways that we're going to talk about these religious groups and how they differ from us is where they go away from what the traditional Orthodox theology of the Christian church is. Okay? So here's what your homework is. What do you believe? How would you know that something is a cult if they come up and say to you, you believe in Jesus? I believe in Jesus. Yeah. Yeah, can't you wait to become a god and have your own planet? Wait a minute. Well, that's not what we believe. Oh, so that's how they define salvation. We'll talk about that. So, all right. So that's going to be next week. And I'll give you a little heads up about this. What is so neat about this, and I love studying history and all this, is that all these new American religious groups are going to form at the same time in the same area and then leave and disperse. And so something happened in that area to create the environment that gives birth to Seventh-day Adventists, that gives birth to Mormons, that gives birth to Christian Scientists, that gives birth to Shakers, all these things. Okay? So it's fascinating. So, all right. Well, y'all, let's go ahead and bow our heads.